Hi everyone, I've just brought another video for you guys, so let's get started without further ado. Also, remember to like and comment. Tell me which manhwa you'd like me to cover next. Let's do this.
One day, the insistent ringing of a telephone broke the silence. The call seemed urgent, a harbinger that something important was about to happen or, perhaps, was already happening. A man pondered the feelings that consumed him. He wondered if what he felt was anger or deep despair while work documents lay forgotten on the floor. The call was from his boss. The man watched the screen, feeling helpless and sad, refusing to answer. The situation seemed futile, without an apparent way out. Despite the inner turmoil, the young man gave a resigned smile as he looked at his cell phone. It was a fragile mask to hide the confusion and chaos that took over his life. Meanwhile, on the other end of the line, his boss's patience was completely exhausted. The lack of response led him to a fit of rage, shouting in frustration at the disobedience. Later, night fell over the city. The lonely light of a street lamp marked the passage of time and a change of scenery, bringing a melancholic atmosphere. Amid the crowd, the protagonist reflected on his harsh reality. More than a month had passed since he lost his job, and he remained without any prospects. He looked at his cell phone, now silent. The device that once tormented him with calls was now just a symbol of his loneliness and the lack of opportunities in his life. The young man felt the weight of age on his shoulders. He realized that even getting a part-time job had become a challenge, which increased his discouragement. A feeling of tightness in his chest overwhelmed him. The reality of his financial and professional situation was an increasingly heavy burden to carry alone. Walking through the empty streets, he did the math in his head. The protagonist concluded that paying the phone bill would leave him with no money at all, a problem that seemed unsolvable. Suddenly, the guy stopped. Something unexpected caught his attention, breaking the flow of his worried thoughts and making him question what was in front of him. Before him, a large and brightly lit convenience store appeared out of nowhere. The young man didn't remember it being there and was intrigued by the sudden presence and brightness of the place. With a curious expression, he observed the facade of the establishment. His attention turned to a possible warning on the door, seeking an explanation for that mysterious place. Driven by curiosity, the protagonist decided to enter. The sound of the door chime marked his passage into the place, a step towards the unknown. A young man entered the convenience store, pointing to the clerk. He explained that he was there because of the part-time job advertisement he had seen. The employee behind the counter was visibly surprised by his direct approach, not knowing how to react initially. The protagonist waited for a response, maintaining his posture, despite feeling a slight embarrassment at her reaction. The young woman, regaining her composure, called his attention in a more appropriate way, trying to break the awkward silence that had formed. To the boy's surprise, the employee revealed with a smile that she was, in fact, the manager of the establishment. A laugh broke the initial tension, establishing a friendlier tone for the conversation that was about to begin. Suddenly, the manager sat down at the table with a shocked expression, as if she had remembered something important. The protagonist was confused by her sudden change in behavior. Meanwhile, the sound of someone coughing filled the silence. The manager, however, quickly regained her professional composure. She picked up a pen and prepared to start the interview, asking for his personal information. When asked about his experience, the young man confirmed that he had worked in a similar place a few years ago. The news of his previous experience made the manager radiant. She realized that she had found a promising candidate for the position. Feeling more at ease, the manager asked to speak informally. The protagonist, a little surprised, agreed to the request. As the conversation flowed, the young man reflected on the consequences of the job. He realized that his sleep schedule would be completely changed. When the manager revealed the generous hourly wage, the protagonist was shocked and accepted the offer immediately, without hesitation. Extremely happy with his decision, the manager clapped her hands. She enthusiastically informed him that he could start working on the same day. The young man finished filling out his documents at the convenience store. The manager watched him, confirming that everything was in order to start his first day. With the paperwork settled, she prepared the uniform for the new employee. It was the official start of his training and a new phase for the boy. The manager handed over the vest with great enthusiasm, welcoming Chan. She excitedly announced that the new employee's training would begin immediately. Later, already in casual clothes, the woman gave Chan an important instruction. She warned him about supplier deliveries which could arrive very early. Already in uniform, Chan listened attentively to her explanations behind the counter. The protagonist absorbed every detail, preparing to take on his new responsibilities. Suddenly, her tone changed to one of serious warning. The manager emphasized a crucial point with a firm gesture, making the importance of the warning clear. Chan, however, did not seem shaken by her seriousness. The young man understood the instruction and expressed relief at knowing how to proceed in that specific situation. With the training completed, the manager smiled again. She encouraged him with a gesture of support, wishing him good luck on his first work shift. Alone behind the counter, Chan said goodbye with a restrained wave. The first shift had officially begun, and now he was on his own. The protagonist picked up his cell phone with a feeling of purpose. With that new job, he would finally have the money needed to pay his landlady the rent. Chan reflected on his luck, a job with a great salary and a kind manager. Meanwhile, the manager recalled that his past as a police officer would be an advantage for the store. He calculated his earning potential, impressed by the amounts. The young man realized that, working there, he could accumulate a significant amount in a short time. Faced with that opportunity, Chan's determination ignited. He decided he would stay in that job to achieve his financial goals, no matter the cost. However, his resolution was abruptly interrupted. Something unexpected caught his attention, and the young man's expression changed to one of complete surprise. Chan looked up at an imposing figure that appeared before him. The sight of sharp fangs revealed that his first shift would be much more dangerous than he imagined. A customer with a dog's head reacted with disproportionate fury. His expression was one of pure rage, and he seemed to be yelling at the convenience store clerk. The young clerk, already tired from his shift, felt frustrated with the situation. He didn't understand the question about toothbrushes, and the customer's aggressive behavior irritated him deeply. Despite the confusion, the employee tried to be helpful. With a forced smile, he pointed in the right direction for the item the man was looking for. The clerk continued to give directions to the correct aisle. He strove to remain calm and assist the customer, despite the strangeness of the situation. The dog-headed man frantically searched for the product on the shelves. His search was intense and desperate, as if it were of utmost importance. In a sudden movement, the customer crouched down, disappearing from sight behind a gondola. The sudden action left the clerk even more perplexed. The young man watched the scene, completely confused. He had never dealt with such a bizarre customer and didn't know how to react to his erratic behavior. Suddenly, the man reappeared at the counter with the product in hand. He gestured impatiently, hurrying the clerk to finalize the purchase. The employee stated the price of the item. The customer then paid with a much higher value bill, placing the money on the counter without waiting. When the clerk tried to hand over the change, he realized that the customer was already leaving. He called out to him, insisting that he take the money back. The man turned around, again with an angry expression. He refused to accept the change and yelled at the clerk in an intimidating manner. The sound of the door chime announced the customer's departure. The young man was left alone, watching the door close as he tried to process what had happened. Alone, the clerk reflected on the peculiar encounter. He felt confused by the man's attitude, a mixture of aggression and a strange generosity. Then, a doubt struck him. The young man raised his hand to his face, questioning whether the customer's appearance was real or if it was all just a mask or makeup. The door chime rang again, interrupting his thoughts. A new customer had arrived, bringing the clerk back to the reality of his job. A customer presented an unusual form of payment, a huge bag, completely full of coins. The situation already indicated that Chan's shift would not be easy. Suddenly, the entire contents were dumped onto the counter. The young man watched the cascade of metal with an expression of shock and dismay. A single coin was caught in the air. It was the beginning of a long and tedious task that the protagonist would have to face alone. The customer, a goblin, displayed the coin with an air of superiority. He called the attendant's attention in a demanding way, making his intentions clear. Chan was completely perplexed by the scene. The young man couldn't believe what was happening during his shift at the convenience store. The reality was undeniable. A goblin was standing before him, patiently waiting for the attendant to count a mountain of coins for a simple payment. Amidst the chaos, the phone rang. It was his boss. Chan tried to maintain his composure and answer professionally, despite the bizarre situation. The door of the convenience store opened, marking the arrival of that peculiar customer who would transform the young man's night into a true nightmare. Later, the same goblin displayed high-value bills with a smug smile, as if mocking all the effort he caused. Completely exhausted, Chan collapsed onto the counter. The task of counting hundreds of coins for 20 minutes left him without energy, wishing only to go home. The protagonist remembered the moment with dread. The simple memory of that exhausting and repetitive work was enough to leave him in a state of shock. He had to count each coin, one by one. The process was slow and meticulous, testing the attendant's patience to its maximum limit. The piles of coins organized on the counter represented the time and energy that were drained from him by a single inconvenient customer. After briefly reporting what happened, the young man ended the call with his boss. He needed a moment to process what had just happened. Chan was completely exhausted after the incident with the goblin customer. Lying on the counter, he could barely keep his eyes open, feeling the weight of a surreal work shift. The young man remembered his first day when a Chihuahua-headed customer appeared, growling furiously. That was the first sign that his new job was anything but ordinary. Soon after, another bizarre customer, a goblin, stared at him. Chan began to understand that this convenience store attracted a clientele that was not of this world. Back in the present, a voice on the phone pulled him from his memories. The protagonist straightened up, suddenly alert and confused by what he was hearing. Chan interrupted his boss, asking for a moment. The word teleportation that he heard on the call seemed absurd, but it was starting to make frightening sense. The boss's explanation about magic and inventory management only increased the young man's confusion. He tried to process the information, but his mind refused to accept it. The reflection on the cell phone screen showed the pure shock on his face. Chan's reality was being undone by a simple phone conversation. Chan's boss then revealed the truth. The store was enchanted with teleportation magic, a spell he himself had cast to connect worlds. With that revelation, the convenience store door glowed with a mystical blue light. The mundane facade dissolved, revealing its true, magical nature. After the call, Chan stood in the middle of the store, now silent. The place looked the same as always, but the protagonist knew that everything had changed forever. Moved by a mixture of fear and curiosity, he decided to see for himself. The young man walked slowly towards the front door. With his heart racing, his hand pushed the glass door. Chan was about to cross the threshold between his world and the unknown. What he saw on the other side left him speechless. The scene was so unbelievable that it confirmed his boss's insane words. Instead of the usual street, there was a vibrant market, full of fantastic creatures and magical beings. The store was, in fact, a portal to another world. Life in that fantastic place followed its own rhythm. Peculiar creatures like a baseball cap bat lived their daily lives, oblivious to the arrival of the astonished human. In a world where the fantastic was routine, creatures like orcs, minotaurs, and skeletons lived their everyday lives. The coexistence between the normal and the supernatural defined the urban landscape, turning the extraordinary into something common. Chan watched the busy street, a mere spectator amidst the chaos of monsters, ghosts, and robots. He felt small and out of place, part of a scenario that never really felt like his. Inside the convenience store, the young man's expression was blank. The monotony of his work contrasted with the vibrant and strange reality outside, trapping him in a colorless routine. With his hands behind his back and his gaze lowered, the protagonist waited for time to pass. His posture revealed a deep resignation, as if he had accepted his insignificant role in that bustling world. Suddenly, a call pulled him from his thoughts. The content of the call visibly shook him, and Chan struggled to contain his emotion as he listened to the voice on the other end of the line. Desperate, he tried to explain himself on the phone, his voice filled with panic. The protagonist urgently needed them to believe him, but his words didn't seem to have the desired effect. Meanwhile, a woman relaxed at home, eating snacks. Her moment of tranquility was suddenly interrupted when her cell phone, which floated in the air, began to glow intensely. She looked at the device, completely shocked. The light intensified, and the surprise on her face gave way to pure astonishment as she realized that something very strange was happening. A loud, distorted sound echoed through the device, breaking the silence of the room. It was a clear sign that the situation on the other end of the line had become dangerous. Back at the store, Chan reacted with pure horror to what he witnessed through the call. Fear paralyzed him as the situation had escalated to a terrifying and incomprehensible level. Looking at the glass in front of him, the young man saw a reflection that was not his own. A demonic figure with long white hair stood behind him, with its hand flat against the surface. The creature stared at him with a sinister smile and a single bright purple eye. Its presence was overwhelming, a palpable threat that promised a terrible fate for the boy. The terror was too much for Chan, who collapsed to the floor. From the phone, a voice called him in panic, but he just laughed hysterically, broken by the horror he had just witnessed. For a moment, the focus shifted to the store shelves. The banality of the displayed products created a disturbing contrast with the scene of despair that had just occurred. Later, a woman with horns and demonic wings entered the establishment. She addressed someone with an authoritative tone, making it clear that her visit had a specific purpose. A female figure with horns and long white hair reflected on something she didn't understand. She seemed lost in her own thoughts, seeking a reason for recent events that confused her. Meanwhile, Chan was huddled behind the counter, completely exhausted. The call he was answering seemed to only worsen his stress, leaving the young man overwhelmed with the situation in the store. Cautiously, the clerk peeked over the counter. He needed to understand what was happening in the store while he was still busy with the important call. His peek revealed a bizarre scene. A pink-haired girl was lying on the floor, laughing uncontrollably. Chan didn't understand anything he saw, finding the situation increasingly strange. Her laughter echoed through the store, a manic and disturbing sound. The girl seemed completely given over to a fit of euphoria or madness, indifferent to everything around her. Chan heard the strange sound, and his expression became a mixture of irritation and confusion. He tried to focus on the conversation, but the noise was a distraction impossible to ignore. Following the instructions he received, Chan knelt down to look for something in a cardboard box. He confirmed that he would do what was asked, even without understanding why. His hand rummaged inside the box, moving objects to find the specific item that his caller had mentioned during the call. Suddenly, an electronic sound came from inside the box, indicating that he had found the object. Chan looked inside, surprised by what he had activated. To his utter disbelief, what he pulled out of the box was a magical girl scepter, bright and colorful. The young man was paralyzed, not understanding the connection of that to his work. The instant the scepter appeared, a dark and powerful energy exploded from the fallen girl. She began to levitate, completely surprising the clerk. With impressive speed, the female figure advanced and forcefully grabbed the cell phone and scepter from Chan's hands, who had no time to react. She pressed the device against the magic scepter. That act seemed to be the key to initiating some kind of ritual or power activation. A wave of pink energy erupted, throwing the girl back violently. The force of the impact was so great that it destabilized Chan, who watched everything in astonishment. However, instead of being injured, the girl floated in an aura of light and butterflies. With the scepter in her hands, she seemed to have completed a transformation, reborn with a new power. Chan was completely stunned by the magical object that appeared in his hands. The scepter glowed with a fantastic energy, a surreal sight amidst his mundane routine. It all started suddenly. A girl had fainted in the middle of the convenience store, knocking everything around her and leaving Chan paralyzed behind the counter. Following mysterious instructions, the young man found the hidden magic scepter. The object floated briefly before falling into his hands, much to his surprise. The instant he held it, the artifact released a wave of magical power, filling the room with a bright light and ethereal butterflies. Back in the present, Chan stood up, still disoriented by the events. He moved hesitantly, trying to process the chaotic situation he found himself in. That's when he saw the girl lying on the floor. The reality of the emergency hit him hard, and panic began to set in. As he approached, he noticed the details: small horns and demon wings. The girl wasn't human, which made the situation even more complicated and dangerous. Holding the magic scepter in one hand and his cell phone in the other, the protagonist felt completely overwhelmed. He had no idea how to handle this. The girl remained unconscious. On the phone, Chan received instructions confirming the severity of her condition to the person on the other end of the line. The voice on the phone offered a solution, describing a remedy that, while not perfect for the case, should have an immediate effect. Chan listened carefully. The instruction was bizarre. Discreetly grab the curse remedy located on the gum shelf, an unlikely solution to a surreal problem. With wide eyes, the young man located the product exactly where indicated. He couldn't believe his store sold something like that. He picked up the box. It was indeed a treatment for a specific condition, which apparently affected the unconscious customer. With the remedy in hand, he turned to the fallen girl, awaiting the next step. The call continued, guiding him through this bizarre crisis. However, before he could administer the remedy, the figure on the floor began to move. The person on the phone noticed the change, announcing that she was waking up. Suddenly, Chan remembered their first encounter. The memory hit him unexpectedly, bringing back the image of that mysterious figure he met in the store. On that occasion, he saw her lying on the floor, surrounded by overturned cups. The young man just watched from afar without understanding the girl's situation. She slowly raised her face. Her expression was serene and a little lost, a moment that was etched in Chan's memory. He remembered offering help. At that moment, she seemed to recover, surrounded by an aura of relief and gratitude. Back in the present, Chan watched her, still on the floor. The protagonist wondered if she was really better now, comparing the current moment with that memory. However, the situation changed drastically. The horned girl covered her mouth, seeming to feel a sudden discomfort, which left the young man perplexed and alarmed. To his complete astonishment, she vomited a liquid with the colors of the rainbow. Chan recoiled instinctively, shocked by the bizarre scene. The protagonist froze. The unbelievable sight of that colorful vomit reflected in his wide eyes, leaving him speechless. Soon after the incident, the girl began to laugh quietly. Her amused reaction contrasted sharply with Chan's shock. A colorful puddle now stained the store floor. While she enjoyed the situation, the young man remained still, trying to process the surreal event. With an air of superiority, she suggested that he leave. Chan's patience ran out, and a dark aura began to envelop him. The young man leaned over her with a serious and angry expression. However, the girl seemed to ignore him, pretending to be asleep on the floor. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and winked at him with a mischievous smile. The young woman broke the tension with a casual and carefree comment. Her attitude tested the limits of Chan's patience. He forced a smile, but the irritation was evident on his face. The horned girl then turned her attention to the colorful puddle on the floor. She seemed genuinely entertained by the mess she had created. After the commotion, the pink-haired girl collapsed on the floor, completely exhausted. The magic scepter fell beside her, its glow fading as she lost consciousness amidst the mess in the store. Chan was paralyzed, shocked by the surreal scene. The girl fell fast asleep on the floor, and the protagonist had no idea how to react. The small creature next to her only confirmed her state of rest. Suddenly, a young man with white hair appeared in the store, looking surprised by the situation. He addressed the fallen girl with a title of respect, which further increased Chan's confusion. The newcomer's exclamation brought Chan back to the reality of the mess in his store. The clerk's initial shock gave way to deep weariness and irritation. This was just another complication in his shift. Chan confronted the white-haired young man with an intimidating look, questioning what he was looking for. The newcomer cringed, clearly frightened by the employee's hostility, and hesitated to answer. Pressed, the young man began to grab items hastily from the shelves. He tried to act like an ordinary customer, hoping to divert Chan's attention and calm the tense situation that had formed. While the customer busied himself, Chan decided to start cleaning. He grabbed the mop, determined to restore a minimum of order to the store, momentarily ignoring the bizarre scene around him. Chan then received a call and reported the situation. Pressed by his interlocutor, he hesitantly confirmed the customer's likely identity, admitting that he might be a vampire. Meanwhile, the white-haired young man's attention turned to the alcoholic beverages section. He examined the bottles with a childlike curiosity, seeming undecided about what to choose. He then grabbed a bottle, acting with a confidence that suggested he considered himself an adult and fit to make the purchase. The young man seemed completely oblivious to the rules of the human world. Chan watched the customer's choice and menacingly rotated the mop handle. The white-haired youth noticed the movement, understanding the implicit warning about the store's safety measures. The young vampire stopped, intimidated by the silent warning. Chan, now back at his post, calmly explained that his actions were just a precaution, maintaining total control of the situation. The youth approached the counter, presenting his shopping basket to Chan. He seemed determined to finalize the purchase, despite the tense atmosphere that the employee had created in the environment. Chan began to process the sale of the selected items. However, when using his payment device, a sound alert indicated that there was a problem, preventing the transaction from completing. The young customer confirmed his intention to purchase with a decisive gesture. The electronic sound indicated that the transaction was being processed, while he seemed to add one last request. The convenience store clerk questioned the customer about the type of cigarette he wanted. The white-haired youth, however, seemed to hesitate, unsure of what to choose. With a sudden gesture, the customer pointed to the shelf behind the counter. He tried to indicate the specific item that had captured his interest, seeming a little lost. The employee followed the indication and reached out to grab the pack of cigarettes that the youth had pointed to. The white-haired customer confirmed enthusiastically. That was exactly the product he wanted, and his satisfaction was evident. However, the clerk turned around with an expression of distrust. The buyer's excitement did not convince him. A silence settled at the counter. The clerk ignored the request and began operating another machine, leaving the customer talking to himself. The white-haired youth was confused by the sudden indifference. He did not understand why his request was being ignored and showed his impatience. The clerk's gaze became serious and focused. He had decided to confront the situation directly. He then turned to face the customer. The dark-haired youth maintained a firm posture, ready to make a demand. Caught by surprise, the customer recoiled. His shocked expression revealed sharp fangs, exposing his unusual nature. The clerk, unfazed, requested identification to verify the buyer's age. In response, the customer slammed a card on the counter with a quick, confident movement, as if that solved everything. With a defiant expression, the young vampire insisted that the clerk check the document. His patience was clearly wearing thin. The employee picked up the ID and examined it. His expression changed to one of bewilderment as he analyzed what was in his hands. The identity was just a drawing of the customer himself, done amateurishly. That was definitely not an official document. At the checkout, Chan was trying to deal with the day's fatigue. However, a strange colored light caught his attention, and the youth expressed his irritation with the unexplainable phenomenon. The white-haired customer presented his ID. He commented on the similarity between the photos, observing the document with a serious and analytical expression. Chan examined the document and noticed a problem. A red denial stamp was imprinted on the ID, indicating that it was not valid for the purchase. Upon realizing the invalidity of the document, Chan felt a wave of satisfaction. He prepared to deny the sale, enjoying the small victory in his chaotic day. Suddenly, the ID began to emit a bright, colorful energy. The inanimate object came to life with a magical light that spread throughout the environment. Caught off guard by the intense glow, the protagonist panicked. He couldn't understand the origin of that energy and questioned what was happening. The magical energy also enveloped the young customer. He was caught off guard by the mysterious force, reacting with an expression of pain and shock. Panic took over both of them. Trapped in the whirlwind of light, both Chan and the customer reacted with despair, without control over the situation. Amidst the chaos, the white-haired boy tried to escape. He ran desperately through the store, questioning why that energy was chasing him. The magical force threw him through the air. Chan, furious and confused, demanded an explanation for the disaster, while the young customer apologized in a panic. Chan remained at the counter, watching the chaos unfold. The customer continued to apologize as he was dragged by the energy emanating from the ID. The white-haired customer fell to the ground, finally free from the energy. However, the ID continued its course, flying toward the sleeping girl in the other aisle. The ID hovered over the sleeping girl, emitting its glow. Amidst the panic, those present discussed what to do, desperate to move the object to a safe location. The magical energy reached its peak. An explosion of light and colored particles filled the environment, signaling the conclusion of that chaotic and unpredictable event. Chan inspected the ID that the customer handed over. However, something about the card made him suspicious, and he analyzed it more closely with a confused expression. Suddenly, the card began to emit an intense glow. A magical and colorful aura emanated from the object, confirming Chan's suspicion that this was no ordinary ID. Looking at the photo, the clerk came across the image of a man wearing a bizarre pink cat mask. The strangeness of the situation left him completely perplexed. Chan's confusion quickly turned to irritation. He stared at the fake document in disbelief, shocked by the customer's audacity in trying to deceive him so obviously. The white-haired youth, realizing that he had been discovered, panicked. He tried to justify himself hastily, claiming that the photo sticker had come loose by accident. The customer's nervousness was evident. He stammered a flimsy excuse, his face sweating and eyes wide with fear, revealing his lie. Ignoring the excuses, Chan grabbed his phone to call the boss. He decided the situation had gone too far and informed him he would call the police next. In an act of pure desperation, the white-haired youth lunged forward and snatched the cell phone from Chan's hand. He needed to stop the call at all costs. After grabbing the device, the customer fled the store at high speed. The young man disappeared down the street before the clerk could react. Later, Chan resumed the call with his boss. Surprisingly calm, he continued the conversation while ringing up his own purchases, including a bottle of wine. On the other end of the line, the boss explained that he already suspected the customer. He confirmed that it was a minor trying to illegally buy alcoholic beverages. Chan then detailed what happened. The protagonist told the boss about the fake ID, explaining that the customer had glued a sticker photo over the original to try and trick him. The forgery, although amateurish, seemed to have been done with some kind of energy. The photo shone brightly when attached to the document in an attempt to conceal the fraud. The boss seemed impressed with his employee's perception. He asked Chan how he managed to identify the fraud that could have fooled anyone else. The answer lay in a special ability. A hidden power allowed Chan to see the truth behind appearances, revealing any kind of deception or falsification. The narration explained that due to the high security of identifications, forgers in that world became masters of illusion magic to create perfect and undetectable copies. Chan grabbed a shopping basket. He reassured himself when he noticed that the store's alarm magic hadn't gone off, interpreting it as a sign that everything was normal. The young man was answering a call. He listened attentively to what the person on the other end of the line was saying, with a serious expression. On the other end, a white-haired man watched the conversation with an apprehensive expression, seeming uncomfortable with the situation. Chan continued to listen in silence. His expression was impassive, but he carefully processed his superior's words. Suddenly, an unexpected proposal shocked him. The person on the phone suggested that it might be better to terminate his work contract. Paralyzed in the middle of the store aisle, the protagonist could hardly believe what he heard. The suggestion caught him completely by surprise. The idea of losing his job echoed in his mind. Chan was stunned, trying to understand the reason behind that drastic decision. Panic began to set in. The young man immediately wondered if he had made a serious mistake to justify a dismissal. However, the woman on the phone seemed to have good intentions. She explained her position in a gentle tone, indicating that her concern was genuine. Desperate, Chan tried to argue. He stated that the job wasn't scary or difficult for him, and that he wished to continue. His interlocutor was surprised by the response. She didn't expect him to want to stay after everything that had happened. The protagonist paused, pondering the situation. He needed to convince the woman to let him stay, despite the obvious dangers. Chan realized that she was genuinely concerned about his well-being. However, he had his own urgent reasons to insist. The image of his mounting bills haunted him. Chan realized that, without that job, he would face misery. The need to work was greater than any fear. Chan was on the phone, receiving a scolding. He hastily agreed with the orders, visibly stressed by the conversation and promising not to cause any more problems. His boss, however, suddenly changed the subject. He questioned him about medicine for the succubus client, making Chan remember a crucial task he had forgotten. The young man grabbed the medicine box. He assured his boss that he would take care of it immediately, feeling the urgency of the situation. Carefully, Chan administered the medicine to the sleeping girl. she swallowed the contents of the sachet, still unconscious on the store floor. The protagonist watched the scene with apprehension. He swallowed hard, clearly nervous about the responsibility of medicating the unconscious customer. After receiving the medicine, the horned girl's expression seemed to soften. She remained sound asleep, now with a more serene appearance. Chan then stepped back a little. He reported to his superior that he had finally managed to give the customer the medicine. On the other end of the line, his boss seemed to accept the situation with resigned calm, deciding not to push the matter any further. The boss assured Chan that the girl would soon regain consciousness. Meanwhile, the young employee remained kneeling, watching over the customer still lying on the floor. Suddenly, Chan felt a chill run down his spine. A sinister aura seemed to emerge behind him as he listened to his boss, sensing that something was wrong. His boss continued with questions about the girl's condition. The young man, however, denied that she seemed dizzy or confused, still not understanding the gravity of what was happening. Chan confirmed his assessment to the boss. He kept the cell phone to his ear, focused on the conversation and completely oblivious to what was about to happen. The call continued, with the employee reporting the store's situation to his superior, trying to maintain an air of normalcy. The name Boss shone on the device's screen. The call was the only thing connecting Chan to reality in that bizarre moment. In the next instant, the cell phone in his hand transformed. The device became a noisy and bright magical scepter, leaving the protagonist perplexed by the sudden change. Chan answered a call at his convenience store job. He listened attentively, his expression revealing slight surprise at the information he received. The conversation continued, with the person on the other end of the line explaining the situation. The young man seemed to carefully consider their words, aware of the strangeness of the request. The protagonist processed what he heard, his expression changing to one of pure disbelief. He simply couldn't believe it. Suddenly, an invisible force threw him off balance. The surrounding environment distorted in a flash of light, and Chan wondered what was happening. The young man fell to the floor, completely stunned by the sudden event. He still held the cell phone, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. Meanwhile, firm footsteps sounded from outside the store. Someone approached with a clear and determined purpose. Driven by urgency, Chan got up and ran outside, trying to understand the cause of all the commotion. Upon exiting, the protagonist stopped abruptly. His expression transformed into pure astonishment at the unbelievable scene unfolding before him. A mountain of delivery boxes was piled up on the street, reaching the height of the buildings. The scale of the task was simply overwhelming. Then, from the heavens, a figure descended riding a winged horse. The newcomer introduced herself as the new employee his sister had mentioned. Chan froze in shock, feeling as if his soul was leaving his body. He could barely process the surreal sight of the rider and her magical mount. The blue-haired woman, Yunha, dismounted the horse. She then asked if that pile of boxes was the logistics that had been previously discussed. Chan's mind flashed back to the call from moments before. He remembered hearing the name Yunha, questioning it without understanding the connection. The voice on the phone confirmed the name. At the same instant, Yunha smiled, and the protagonist finally understood the terrible truth of the situation. Faced with the new colleague and the impossible task, Chan was speechless for a moment. Then, he bowed in a deep and desperate reverence. A delivery man asked Chan to check the items and sign the receipt. The young man, caught off guard, agreed and took the tablet that was extended to him to formalize the delivery. However, upon leaving, Chan came across an absurd amount of stacked boxes. The scale of the delivery was much larger than he imagined, leaving him paralyzed for a moment. The protagonist inspected the list of items on the tablet, his expression becoming increasingly confused. He couldn't understand the contents of that digital paperwork, feeling that something was very wrong. Suddenly, the scene changed, focusing on a decisive step. Someone approached something or someone on the ground, creating a moment of suspense about what would be revealed. The camera revealed a girl with horns and pink hair, asleep on the floor. Her presence there was a complete mystery, a fantastic figure completely out of place in that reality. Later, Chan was on a call. The person on the other end of the line mentioned dragon scales, an item that left the young man completely perplexed as he didn't understand the reference. The speaker seemed genuinely surprised by his confusion. She questioned, with disbelief, whether Chan's world really didn't have creatures like dragons, finding the idea absurd. With a confident smile, Chan explained the logic of his world. He stated that such creatures did not exist, as there was no magic or mythical species in his reality, treating the matter with disdain. Meanwhile, the girl asleep on the store floor began to awaken. Her eyes slowly opened, signaling that Chan's reality was about to be challenged in an unexpected way. The young man's confidence crumbled instantly. Upon noticing the movement, his attention turned to the girl, and his expression changed from presumption to absolute shock. He interrupted the conversation, completely focused on the scene unfolding before him. The protagonist could barely process what he was seeing, losing track of the call. The horned girl was now sitting up, looking around with a blank and confused expression. Chan commented that she had finally woken up, confirming the unbelievable sight. The female figure seemed completely disoriented. Her lost gaze suggested that she had no idea where she was or how she had gotten there, adding to the mystery about her identity. In a moment of clarity, the girl asked Chan for help calling a taxi. The young man, still on the phone, seemed to agree to help get rid of that suspicious customer. Chan then accompanied her out of the store. He helped her approach a taxi stopping on the street, acting with hesitant kindness in the face of the bizarre and inexplicable situation. Chan tried to wake the horned woman, who seemed exhausted. She let out a sigh of fatigue, still with her eyes closed, holding a red object to her chest. The young man felt uncomfortable with the woman's closeness. He held a small object, caught off guard by her relaxed attitude in such a strange situation. The transaction was completed. A hand handed over a credit card, finalizing the service that had been provided and ending the matter between them. While the horned woman remained seated, a giant white creature watched them from outside. The situation was becoming increasingly bizarre for Chan. The protagonist tried to process the surreal scene. His expression revealed a mixture of nervousness and curiosity in the face of the inexplicable events unfolding. Suddenly, an understanding seemed to hit the young man. His expression changed to one of sudden surprise, as if he had realized something important. The horned woman reflected on the situation, her mind full of doubts. She questioned the meaning behind what was happening. In a quick movement, she cornered Chan, demanding an explanation. Her sudden proximity and her inquisitive tone left the young man completely speechless. Pressured, the protagonist couldn't answer. He remained silent, unable to formulate a word under the woman's intense gaze. The woman's reaction was one of pure shock. Her eyes widened as she processed the situation, an unexpected revelation hitting her head-on. Chan's hesitation vanished. The young man now stared at her with a serious and determined expression, indicating that he had made a decision. Later, on the street, Chan said goodbye with a deep bow. The formal gesture marked the end of the meeting as a car drove away. As soon as he was alone, the weight of events fell on him. The protagonist sighed, his face marked by exhaustion and disbelief at what he had just experienced. The car drove off, disappearing into the night and leaving the street silent behind. The horned woman and her mysteries were gone with it. Alone again, Chan stretched, trying to relieve the tension accumulated in his body. He needed a moment to recover after the chaotic night. Chan arrived for his shift at the convenience store with a carefree energy. The door's bell announced his arrival, breaking the quiet and drawing attention to his entrance. However, a customer was already waiting for him. The blue-haired woman looked exhausted and frustrated, letting out a heavy sigh that revealed her weariness with some situation. Her exhaustion quickly gave way to a serious and determined expression. The young woman recomposed herself, focusing on the reason she was there. The woman questioned him about dragon scales, leaving Chan completely confused. The protagonist didn't understand the reason for that unexpected question and was left speechless. The young man was silent for a moment, processing the bizarre question. His expression showed that he had no idea what she was talking about, caught completely by surprise. The woman then took out her cell phone, explaining that her sister wanted to talk to Chan. She was acting as an intermediary, following the instructions she received on the device. That absurd situation reminded him of an old job. Chan recalled a heated argument between his former boss and a delivery man over spoiled ingredients. Back in the present, the blue-haired woman remained focused on her cell phone. She seemed to be receiving more information or waiting for the right moment to continue the conversation. Upon receiving what she was waiting for, she turned abruptly towards Chan. The moment to act had arrived, and she was ready to proceed. The protagonist confirmed her question, still not fully understanding the situation. He simply responded to what was asked, awaiting the next step in that strange interaction. The woman then showed Chan the screen of her cell phone. In the image, a smiling girl greeted him in a friendly way, revealing herself to be the sister mentioned earlier. Chan was shocked to recognize the voice. It was his boss, who was asking him and someone named Yoonhye to check the condition of the dragon scales together. The woman's identity was revealed. Their destination was the store's warehouse. The boss's request led them to the storage area, where the mysterious item was supposed to be kept. Upon crossing the door, however, the scenery changed drastically. They were no longer in the warehouse, but in a kind of ancient and dark dungeon, lit by torches. Chan looked around, completely shocked and unable to process the sudden change of environment. Yoonhye, however, didn't seem surprised, as if she already expected it. Chan was shocked to discover that the store's warehouse looked like a medieval castle corridor. The sight was so bizarre that it left him speechless, questioning the reality of the place. A female voice questioned him naturally, as if the scene were normal. Chan, still stunned by the sight, could only confirm his surprise without understanding the situation. The blue-haired woman smiled, amused by his reaction. Her calmness and familiarity with the place contrasted completely with the young man's confusion. The peculiar decoration was, apparently, a deliberate choice. In a memory, a younger girl teased the woman about her unique taste, but she defended her style with conviction. The girl, however, didn't seem convinced. She insisted that the decoration style was strange, reinforcing the eccentricity of the situation for anyone who wasn't used to it. Back in the present, the blue-haired woman and Chan walked through the immense and dark warehouse. The place was vast and oppressive, very different from a common storage. The woman noticed a brighter spot ahead and indicated it, guiding the way safely. Chan followed her, still suspicious and trying to understand where he was. The young man used his cell phone's flashlight to illuminate the dark path, following the woman between the shelves. The darkness made the environment even more mysterious and unsettling. In another moment, the pink-haired girl seemed resigned to the situation. She sighed, pondering the circumstances and what could be done about it. Suddenly, a purple and viscous substance began to drip from the ceiling and walls. The goo spread rapidly through the corridor, turning the environment into something dangerous. Chan looked at the scene with pure horror. He couldn't believe what was happening, paralyzed by the sudden danger that arose out of nowhere. The purple goo accumulated on the floor, forcing the person to step back to avoid being touched. The substance seemed alive and approached menacingly. The protagonist expressed his panic, realizing that the situation was much more serious than a simple abnormality. He questioned the nature of that bizarre thing that surrounded them. In contrast, the blue-haired woman remained completely calm. She observed the scene with a disconcerting tranquility, as if she saw no danger at all in the purple goo. She turned to Chan and commented on the scale of the event, her serene expression suggesting that this was nothing out of the ordinary for her. The young man, however, remained perplexed. A blue-haired woman explained that she brought discarded dragon scales. She acted in haste, as the material was being neglected and needed immediate attention. The magical substance pulsed with an unstable energy. The visitor admitted that because of the urgency, she couldn't find a suitable company to deal with it. She ran her hand through her hair, frustrated with her own haste. In the background, Chan watched the scene, surprised by the unexpected visit and the bizarre material. Suddenly, the person in the video call addressed Chan. The young man looked at the cell phone, confused to realize that the conversation was about him. On the screen, a smiling girl confirmed the proposal. Her cheerful image contrasted with the dark goo that spread across the store floor. Chan froze in shock. The proposal made over the phone was so absurd that it left him momentarily speechless. The blue-haired woman then offered him a piece of the magical matter. It was a direct invitation for him to take on the responsibility. The glowing purple mass writhed in her hand. It was a cluster of pure power, awaiting the protagonist's decision. Upon hearing that she trusted him with the task, Chan felt a chill. The sinister aura emanating from the substance terrified him. However, as he looked at the girl on his cell phone screen, his determination strengthened. The protagonist accepted the deal without hesitation. Chan reached out to touch the substance. The blue-haired woman smiled, pleased that he had finally accepted the dangerous job. The instant his finger made contact with the matter, a small spark of energy manifested, indicating a reaction. The young man was completely confused. He didn't understand what had happened, or why the reaction was so subtle and unexpected. He then realized that the substance wasn't reacting to him, but to his cell phone. The magical matter seemed to be drawn to the device in his other hand. The visitor watched the phenomenon in astonishment. The cluster of magical power was actively moving away from Chan, as if rejecting him. Following the instructions he received on his cell phone, Chan decided to ignore the strange appearance of the substance. He confirmed that he would touch it, preparing for whatever happened. The moment his hand made contact, the shapeless matter reacted with a burst of light. A bright, magical energy enveloped his fingers, initiating an unexpected transformation. Chan stood frozen in amazement. He hadn't expected such a powerful reaction and stared at the result of his action, completely shocked by the phenomenon. The blue-haired woman, who was watching everything closely, was also dumbfounded. The transformation of the magical substance took her completely by surprise, mirroring the protagonist's reaction. Impulsively, the woman grabbed Chan by the shoulders, expressing her utter disbelief. She couldn't believe what had materialized in the young man's hands. Both stared at the glowing blue orb. While the woman seemed excited and amazed by the discovery, the young man remained in a state of pure confusion. Meanwhile, the girl on the video call analyzed the situation more cautiously. She considered that it was still too early to celebrate, suggesting that the real challenge was yet to come. Along with the energy sphere, an ornate magical scepter emerged from nowhere. The object seemed to have come out of a fairy tale, adding to the mystery of the moment. Chan now held the two magical items, completely perplexed. He looked at the artifacts in his hands, trying to process the bizarre reality he found himself in. On the other end of the line, the girl's expression changed subtly. Her eyes widened, indicating that she had noticed something of extreme importance about what had happened. The protagonist listened attentively to the explanation coming from his cell phone. A specific word was said, but he remained with a blank expression, not understanding its real meaning. The blue-haired woman intervened, offering a simpler explanation. She gestured to the remnants of magic and clarified what that special condition meant for him. Chan turned around, suspicious. The information he was receiving seemed unlikely, and he began to question the veracity of it all, still with the cell phone to his ear. The girl on the phone then recalled the sound the scepter had emitted. She explained that such a reaction only happened in two very specific circumstances, preparing to reveal the truth. In a serious tone, she continued her analysis. The woman was about to reveal the second possibility, one that was much more dangerous and could define Chan's destiny. In the video call, the girl explained her idea with contagious enthusiasm. She seemed to have found the perfect solution to their problem, and the chosen one for the task was obvious to her. With an animated gesture, she pointed to an object that shone intensely. The young woman confidently demonstrated the power that was at stake, certain that her plan would work. Meanwhile, Chan answered a call with a tired expression. He listened to the instructions on the other end of the line, seeming overwhelmed by the responsibilities. Suddenly, an imposing figure appeared before him in the alley. Chan felt small and vulnerable, not understanding what was happening or why he was being approached in that way. The protagonist turned sharply, astonishment taking over his face. He realized too late that he wasn't alone and that danger was much closer than he imagined. With no time to react, Chan was violently pressed against the wall. The force of the impact left him stunned and completely immobilized at the mercy of his aggressor. With his eyes wide with panic, the young man tried to process the situation. He couldn't understand what the woman wanted from him, and fear prevented him from thinking clearly. The blue-haired woman, however, didn't seem hostile. With a confident smile, she approached and made an unexpected request, as if this violent approach was perfectly normal. She revealed her intention. She needed his help to purify something important. The proposal was direct, and her gaze made it clear that she wouldn't take no for an answer. Chan was incredulous at the request. The idea that he, of all people, could perform such a specialized task seemed absurd. His expression was one of pure confusion. Pressured, the protagonist agreed with his manager's orders on the phone. He was caught between the demands of his job and the bizarre situation he found himself in. On the cell phone screen, the girl watched with eyes shining with expectation. Her hope and confidence in the success of the mission placed even more weight on Chan's shoulders. Her intense gaze through the screen made him uncomfortable. The pressure for him to accept the purification task was immense, coming from all sides. The woman in front of him adopted the same hopeful and bright expression. Now, two people were staring at him with the same overwhelming expectation, leaving him with no escape. Completely overwhelmed by the double pressure, Chan sighed in resignation. He felt cornered, realizing that he had no choice but to give in. The blue-haired woman celebrated with a tight hug, thanking Chan enthusiastically. The young man, however, was completely stunned and dizzy from her sudden reaction and strength. Next, she presented him with a large artifact that pulsed with a sinister purple energy. The woman encouraged him with a smile, hoping he would interact with the object. Chan observed the scene with an expression of pure boredom and disinterest. The woman insisted that he put his arm into the substance, but the protagonist didn't seem convinced by the idea at all. Upon noticing his refusal, the huntress seemed surprised and questioned his change in attitude. Chan, in turn, seemed to have reconsidered the risk he was about to take. A memory of a recent conversation came to his mind. Someone had reassured him, stating that he possessed something special and that probably nothing would go wrong. However, reality made him hesitate. The young man apologized, admitting that he lacked the courage to continue. He turned his face away, unable to face the woman's disappointment. Suddenly, his eyes widened in shock. Something he saw on his cell phone screen completely changed his perspective and left him paralyzed. The image on the screen revealed an offer he couldn't refuse, a large sum of money being offered to him. The financial proposal was the motivation he needed. Chan's hesitation disappeared, replaced by a new and cold determination. Need spoke louder than fear, and he decided he would do whatever it took. He approached the artifact, noticing how repulsive the substance looked up close. Despite his aversion, the protagonist didn't back down. With his gaze fixed on the object, Chan strengthened his resolve. He knew he needed that money, and that was the only reason to go through with the plan. Without further ado, the young man plunged his hand into the purple energy. The substance reacted violently to his touch, enveloping his arm with an unknown power. A wave of energy exploded from the point of contact, releasing an immense and volatile force that spread rapidly. Chan was caught off guard by the intensity of the reaction. The energy surged up his arm with an overwhelming force, and he felt the raw power course through his body. The force dragged him violently into the artifact. Chan was sucked in without a chance to resist, while the blue-haired woman simply watched the scene unfold. Chan looked at his hands, shocked. A dark and unstable energy began to manifest, completely escaping his control and enveloping him. The energy then exploded in an overwhelming torrent. The protagonist was completely swallowed by the chaotic force, losing himself in the whirlwind of power that dragged him along. Inside the energy vortex, the young man struggled to stay conscious. The pressure was immense, threatening to overwhelm him at any moment. However, the dark energy suddenly transformed. A blinding and purifying light erupted, completely altering the nature of the power that enveloped him. When the light finally dissipated, tranquility returned to the location. The surge of power had ceased, leaving only silence behind. Exhausted, Chan recovered from the event. The young man could barely process the chaotic experience he had just experienced, feeling his body heavy. The protagonist remained silent for a moment, still trying to understand what had happened. Exhaustion took over as he relived the moment in his mind. A voice called him by name, breaking his stupor. He realized that he was not alone and that his actions had immediate consequences. Chan hurried to apologize to the blue-haired girl who was lying on the ground. Concerned, he asked if she had been hurt in the incident. The young woman reassured him, stating that she was fine. She expressed her gratitude as Chan's intervention protected her from a more serious head injury. In the midst of the commotion, an object fell to the ground with a dull thud. It was a magic scepter, which had come loose during the fall. Chan picked up the scepter and analyzed it closely. The young man inspected it with curiosity, trying to understand the nature of that unusual item. The protagonist commented that the item showed no reaction, similar to a previous incident. In the background, however, the girl watched him with an excited smile. Unexpectedly, the young woman approached from behind and touched the back of Chan's neck. The sudden contact and proximity left him visibly embarrassed. Later, on the street, the girl riding a Pegasus said goodbye. She informed Chan that she had already reported the success of the mission to her sister, assuring that everything was resolved. A blue-haired woman approached him with a friendly smile. She questioned him about his frequency in the place, seeming to have an expectation about his presence there. Next, she insisted that he abandon the formalities between them. The young man was visibly surprised by the sudden breach of protocol and the unexpected intimacy. The woman then remembered a previous conversation. Her sister had confirmed that the new employee was young and had the ideal age for what she was planning. The protagonist was embarrassed by the attention he received. He looked away, visibly ashamed by the direct interaction and the woman's words. The woman, in turn, adjusted her glasses with an air of confidence. She seemed satisfied with his reaction and ready for what was to come. Later, the young man was outside the store, exhausted. White feathers floated around him, creating a surreal scene that contrasted with his weariness. The falling feathers enveloped the entire block. The event transformed the common urban landscape into something magical and inexplicable, leaving the protagonist perplexed. An intense glow reflected in his gaze. At that moment, the young man seemed to understand something important or make a crucial decision in the face of the phenomenon. He finally realized that the entire night had passed. The sun was already rising, marking the end of a long and bizarre shift and the beginning of a new day. Back at work, the protagonist began to serve customers. The first of them placed a variety of items on the counter to be registered and paid for. The young man then noticed that the customer wasn't an ordinary person. It was a figure with dog-like features who seemed anxious and a bit awkward during the purchase. Despite the customer's unusual appearance, the clerk processed the purchase professionally. He scanned the products and accepted the payment without showing surprise. As soon as the payment was completed, the customer with dog-like features hurriedly left the store. The protagonist just watched their sudden departure. However, the strangeness of the day was far from over. A new line of peculiar customers formed, including a small fairy and a shapeless creature. At the end of it all, the protagonist felt the weight of exhaustion. The endless shift and the bizarre customers left him completely drained, physically and mentally. During a quiet moment in the store, Chan was distracted by his cell phone on the floor. However, a sound made him raise his head, wondering what had happened. The young man quickly got up to greet whoever had entered. He welcomed them, expecting a customer, as was his job. However, to his surprise, there was no one in sight. The convenience store remained silent and empty, leaving the clerk confused by the situation. Chan returned to his post, wondering if a customer had simply changed their mind at the door. He tried to put the incident behind him and went back to looking at his cell phone. His attention was captured again, this time by a voice. The protagonist turned to the side, responding to the call automatically. The voice was timid and came from a very low point, almost hidden by the counter. Chan realized that someone was there, but he couldn't see who it was. Curious, the clerk leaned over the counter. He tried to see the source of that hesitant voice that was calling him. What he saw left him completely shocked. His eyes widened in disbelief at the totally unexpected figure standing before him. It was a little girl with horns, wings, and a tail. Her appearance was otherworldly, and she stared at him with big yellow eyes, waiting for service. The child seemed shy but determined. She held her bag tightly, as if gathering courage to place an order with the stunned clerk. The girl finally spoke, making an unusual request. She didn't want candy or snacks, but colored paper and scissors, which left Chan even more perplexed. Despite the strangeness, Chan kept his composure. He pointed out to the little customer where the items she was looking for were located, on a very high shelf. The girl looked up, realizing that the craft supplies were out of her reach. Her small wings trembled slightly in anticipation. Chan remained silent behind the counter, just watching the small figure. He pondered the unusual maturity of that mysterious child. The young creature tried to reach the items on her own, stretching as far as she could. Chan noticed how pale she was, a detail that added to the mystery around her. The convenience store clerk observed the new customer with an analytical look. He noticed her unusual characteristics, concluding that she was some kind of reptile. Meanwhile, the little dragon girl carefully examined the products on the shelf. She seemed completely absorbed in her search, looking for something specific among the store's items. Upon finding what she wanted, the young girl tried to reach the object on a high shelf. However, her small stature prevented her from getting the item on her own, and she stretched in vain. The clerk grabbed the product for her, but the girl's reaction surprised him. Instead of being happy, she began to cry silently, with an expression of deep sadness. Realizing the misunderstanding, the young man crouched down to help her find what she really needed. He patiently searched for the correct items while the little one continued to sniffle. With a gentle smile, the clerk presented the items he found: colored paper and scissors. He hoped that would be enough to cheer up the young customer. The girl's eyes lit up with pure joy and gratitude upon seeing the objects. Her tears of sadness turned into tears of happiness at his gesture. Satisfied, the little dragon girl began to examine her new art supplies. The young man watched her, pleased that he had finally managed to help her find what she wanted so much. However, upon looking more closely at the items, the girl's expression changed. She noticed something that suddenly made her worried, interrupting her moment of happiness. She turned to the clerk and showed him the scissors, trying to communicate her problem. The young girl seemed to be pointing out a difficulty that he had not foreseen. The guy didn't understand the reason for her concern. He questioned her, confused as to why she was returning one of the items he had just gotten for her. The problem was the total cost. Adding the price of the paper and scissors, the amount exceeded what the girl could pay, creating an unexpected dilemma for her. The little one shook her head, embarrassed. She remembered an important lesson about not accepting things from others, which put her in a difficult situation. Her intention was noble. A child's drawing revealed that she wanted to use the materials to make a gift for her mother, a simple gesture of love and affection. With a heavy heart, the girl looked at the colored paper. She would have to make a difficult choice, as she couldn't take everything she needed for her gift. The young man understood the situation with a sigh of resignation. He seemed a little frustrated, but accepted what was said. Meanwhile, the little girl explained her difficulty. Her expression was one of pure concern as she held the clipboard against her chest. The guy's attention turned to her hands. He realized that something was wrong and showed his curiosity and concern. The problem was revealed. Instead of delicate fingers, the child possessed sharp and intimidating claws. That explained her difficulty. He processed the information. The little girl confirmed that her strength tore the paper, and the young man realized that the problem was bigger than it seemed. The child was disheartened by her own limitation. The task of making a gift seemed impossible for her, which made her visibly sad. Upon realizing it was a surprise gift, the young man's expression softened. He felt a wave of compassion for the little one. Then, he proposed a solution. He showed her a drawing of flowers and suggested a collage activity, which immediately caught the little girl's attention. The young man watched her work thoughtfully. He got involved in the task, ensuring she could complete her project. He reflected on how the situation had become complicated. Helping the child was taking longer than expected, and his shift was almost over. The little girl, however, was completely immersed in her task. With scissors in hand, she focused entirely on cutting out the paper. Time passed, and fatigue began to weigh on the young man. Suddenly, a quick movement from the child snapped him out of his thoughts. In the blink of an eye, the little girl disappeared from his sight. The young man looked around, confused, trying to figure out where she had run off to. She then reappeared, proudly holding a chocolate bar. The child had found something she wanted to take with her. With a hopeful look, she asked to buy the candy. The young man agreed and guided her towards the checkout. At the convenience store counter, the transaction was completed. The employee accepted payment for the chocolate. He then handed the candy to the little girl, who held it with both hands, looking at it. The young man, however, was confused. The customer didn't leave as expected. Instead, the girl broke the chocolate bar in half and offered one of the pieces to him. The employee was completely shocked by the child's unexpected gesture. He tried to speak, stammering, unsure how to react to her kindness. The girl insisted that he accept it, explaining that he should have the bigger piece. The young man was speechless, touched by the little one's innocence, but still perplexed by the situation. She invited him to eat together. Awkwardly, the employee accepted the offer. He took the piece of chocolate that the girl extended to him, sealing the moment of sharing. Meanwhile, a young woman approached the store, waving with a radiant smile on her face. Moments later, the employee and the girl were sitting, eating the chocolate. The young man's confusion was evident. Suddenly, his co-worker arrived, greeting him. The young man was startled by her arrival. He tried to explain the bizarre situation, saying that it all started when he lent the child a pair of scissors. The co-worker watched the scene carefully, processing the strange interaction between her manager and the little customer. The young man listened to the explanation, his expression revealing slight confusion. The situation was clearly more complex than he imagined, and the information caught him by surprise. The woman next to him confirmed his doubts. She explained that the child in question wasn't ordinary, but belonged to a very special species, which justified her peculiar behavior. The conversation was about a little pure-blooded dragon girl. Oblivious to the adults' discussion, the young creature seemed content, entertained by a simple manual activity. The woman began to detail the biology of dragons. She revealed that they went through a long growth period of 3 years, still inside the egg before finally being born. During this long incubation, something unique developed. A horn, which functioned as a specialized organ to absorb and channel immense magical power. Back at the convenience store, the woman continued her explanation about the particularities of that race. The protagonist listened attentively, trying to process the torrent of fantastic information. She then mentioned a vulnerability. Because they are very young, dragons cannot fully control their innate abilities, especially amidst many unfamiliar people. The young man seemed to process the information. The woman clarified that they lacked the experience to distinguish people by their colors, a perception that left them exposed. The ability to judge someone's character, she continued, was something learned through life, a lesson that the little dragon, absorbed in her cutting, had not yet learned. The little one finished her handiwork. A piece of paper fell gently, marking the end of her concentration and the beginning of a new interaction. With a snap of inspiration, the woman concluded her point. She smiled, having found the perfect explanation for the situation they were discussing. She then called the young man's attention directly, pulling him from his thoughts. The young man turned to her, caught off guard by the sudden call. The little dragon approached, proudly showing the paper clover she had made. Her eyes sparkled with joy and anticipation for their reaction. The woman praised the girl's work. The praise, however, was too much for the little one, who reacted with extreme shyness, almost falling apart from embarrassment. The protagonist watched the scene in complete astonishment, unsure how to react. Behind him, the dragon girl peeked, equally surprised by the dynamic between the adults. The man considered a solution to disguise the situation during the day. The pink-haired girl, however, expressed her deep insecurity about the plan. Meanwhile, the winged figure tried to calm her down, noticing the young woman's discomfort in the middle of the hallway.